So usually when something's recommended to me 3 times or I hear something 3 times and I really listen, call me slow. But so about 2 or 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 3 different people recommended this yoga studio to check out, Ginseng Yoga in South Park. And actually the instructor, they suggested I check out this instructor and his yoga practice on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I checked it out. And Bhava Ram was the instructor for those nights. And what I experienced in those yoga sessions was a powerful experience of God, a powerful divine experience. Bhava Ram is a master at creating an environment where the divine is experienced. It's not as much about the posture, it's not about the yoga, it's about the heart open experience. And so it kind of for a while became my Sabbath, became a time in which I could just go and be fed and inspired. So I've been going off and on about 2.5 years. And I know some of you have as well, because I see some of you there, Devavani and others. So it was a really powerful experience of Sabbath. And then about a couple months ago, Devavani sent me, TED Talk, and she sent me a link to that, and Bhava was a speaker on TED Talk, and you gave your story, and I was so inspired by your story that I thought, I want all of us, to be inspired by your story, and so I invited Bhava Ram to come and speak to us today. So let's welcome Bhava Ram.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so good to be here. And the talk that I'm going to give is entitled Father's Day, A Love Story. It's also a war story, and it's a story of personal transformation. It's a story about falling into the darkest place of the abyss and ultimately climbing your way out of that abyss and finding new light and life and new hope. And while it's my story, I'm going to share with you what my journey was in that regard. I really feel like it's all of our stories, because I think we're all here because we're seekers. We're looking for something beyond the material abundance in our lives, which is a wonderful thing to have. We're looking for something beyond all the amazing freedoms that we enjoy in this country. We're looking for something far beyond the external, for something that's deep inside of us. We're looking for a way to go home to that place of who we really are. And for some people, that's a difficult process, because there's a lot of resistance to going home. And probably the best example that I can share is a guy named Bhava Ram, who was very resistant to that journey at one time. So my journey starts in war. I'm the person there in the middle of that. I came of age in the 1960s, so I was really deeply moved, even before I became a teenager, by the civil rights movement. Touched me in a very deep place, by the women's movement. I was deeply impacted by the Vietnam War that was going on at the time in my life, and I felt really disenfranchised. I felt angry. I felt like dropping out, and I sort of did drop out. I ran up into the redwood forests of Humboldt County in Northern California and tried to grow my hair as long as I could. But after a while, as I matured, I wanted really to play a role in my country and in my culture. And I walked into a little television station one day. I don't even know why I went in. I'd gotten a degree, a graduate degree in literature, and never taken a journalism course in my life. And I walked in and said, here I am. And there was a job opening, and they thought I was the person that was flying in for the job interview. They said, are you the one that's flying? I said, yeah, that's. In work boots and blue jeans and a flannel shirt for the job interview, you know, my redwood forest uniform. And needless to say, I was given the job, and that launched a career for me where I really felt I could make a difference in the world. I took that civil rights anger and that anti-war sentiment that I felt at that time, and that big desire for for peace and justice in the world. And I had a way to express that in a positive context. So I was immediately moved towards investigative reporting and white-collar crime, political fraud, and things like that, environmental, illegal logging in the Redwood National Forest. And it was so empowering that it completely identified my life. It became who I was. And I'm going to fast forward now to Afghanistan in 1986. That's when the Soviets had invaded that country, and the United States was helping the freedom fighters, the Mujahideen, and any journalist that was caught in the country, a Western journalist, was executed. So there I went. Because I was pretty much a classic type A person, and I felt I'm going to work longer and harder than anybody else, and nothing is going to stop me. So there I was with the Mujahideen freedom fighters up in the mountains of Afghanistan. You can probably, if you look for the guy who looks like he doesn't belong in the group, that's me there in the middle with my Afghan hat on. And after that, I went down into the refugee camps where there were 5 million people out of a nation of 15 million people in these camps under unbelievable conditions with incredible war wounds and more pouring in every day. That's where I met Mahmoud, this little 11-year-old boy who had been burned all over his body with napalm. And he had walked for 21 days out of his village with burns all over his body with no food to this little refugee camp. And he became the focal piece of my reports. And I felt so much compassion for him. And the reports, when we got back and broadcast them at the time, caused a great outpouring from our viewing audience, and we were actually able to airlift scores of wounded children into the United States for medical treatment, and it felt fantastic to me. And I was told by my news director that I had received a reward. Didn't know what it was, and didn't feel comfortable with getting an award for documenting the suffering of these beautiful children. We flew to New York City, and I walked up on the stage to the podium, and I received the Pulitzer Prize of Broadcast Journalism. Wow, I mean, this little kid from Humboldt County. And so my career started to skyrocket, really upward ascending. Now I'm becoming a network foreign correspondent. I took a rare little vacation down to the Bahamas after that to sort of bask in that award and everything that was happening for me. And on the last night on that vacation, a big storm came up. And I had to batten down all the storm windows. And I had a little cabin in a little forest on the ocean on a little island with no automobiles, no telecommunications. And the storm handles were corroded, and I twisted them real hard. I was probably as high as that corner up there. I'd sort of crawled myself up on a ledge. The handles broke. I fell. I hit the base of my spine. So hard it knocked all of the air out of me, and I thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe in. I was just desperately trying to take an in-breath. Obviously, finally my breath came, and I was in shock. My whole body was numb, and I decided to crawl into the bed and fall asleep, and I couldn't move my legs. It took me 15 minutes to make a connection from my brain to my legs. Finally, I got into bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I was in the most incredible pain I had ever experienced in my life. Running down both arms, shooting up and down my spine. But, you remember I was an alpha male type. And nothing was going to stop me, so the doctors put me on drugs. Ibuprofen and Valium, a muscle relaxer, and I started taking these all the time and having pain every day, always thinking, well, the next day it's going to go away. The next day it's going to go away, even when it was gripping my whole body. And just moving forward, I'm going to work longer and harder than anybody else. I did that for 7 years. In the drug wars of South America, where Bolivian and Peruvian troops were locating these drug cartel labs and burning them down, in the jungles, riding on helicopters. In the first Gulf War, where I was the frontline correspondent for the Marines who were on the front lines of all the fighting in the war, and the Kurdish refugee crisis after that, and finally I was given all of Asia, and I moved to Hong Kong. So my career is going like this. It's just a rocket. My health is plummeting because I'm in pain all the time, and I'm more and more a pretty difficult person to be around. Because when you're in pain, you're tight, and your patience level is really diminished, and you're always sort of gritting your teeth inside. And so I was on this downward spiral in that way, and then I was in Manila, the Philippines, covering a story, and I was just sitting on a chair in a nice hotel, and the lowest vertebra of my back cracked wide open. When I had fallen 7 years earlier, it had a hairline fracture in it. That's what was causing me that pain. It cracked wide open, cut into my spinal cord. I hit the ground howling like a feral cat. I was medevaced out, had emergency surgery here in San Diego because I had the completely broken back. The doctor said he took tongs in there and lifted out half of my lowest vertebra. He'd never seen anything like it. Had this massive surgery in my back, and it failed. And I was declared permanently disabled. And from this global career and this global home, this became my new home. This body brace that went from my sternum down to just above my knees, and I could no longer sit up to eat a meal. I walked very gingerly and carefully with a cane, and I took more and more medications, and I began this downward spiral into an abyss. That's me, 225 pounds of me. I used to think I could never, ever show anyone this picture. And I became a master of anger. I became a master of fear. I became a master of self-pity and despair until 4 years later of chronic pain when my only child was born, my son, Morgan. Finally, I thought, well, I have hope. I'm going to be a daddy. Even if I can't carry him on my shoulders or lift him into my arms or throw a ball, I'm going to be a daddy. And it gave me hope again that I had an identity, because I was so invested in my identity as a war correspondent that when it went away, I just became a despondent of my own inner war. And 3 months after my boy was born, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and told I wouldn't live for 2 years. Okay. And I became even darker and more depressed. I was given radiation that started in my throat, which is why I need so much liquid. And it was from exposure to depleted uranium used by the American forces in the Persian Gulf War to pierce Iraqi tanks. And I had been on the front lines of a lot of those battles. It was metastasized throughout my entire lymphatic system. And the doctors basically said, write your will. You're not going to live for 2 years. Now I had this arsenal of drugs, heavy, heavy drugs. And I was still drinking like a good foreign war correspondent. But I thought that was okay because I drank really expensive wine. That's how the mind works in situations like that. So I started this downward spiral that was even a deeper descent than when I had broken my back and had a failed back surgery, because I felt I'm leaving this child that meant the world to me, because my whole social world had unraveled. My marriage was ending because I can't believe that anybody could enjoy being around me. I was so dark, and I was so depressed, and I was so filled with anger and self-absorption. And I was only present when I was with that little boy. And when he turned 2 years old, he looked at me and realized I was different, and he said, "Get up, Daddy. Get up, Daddy." It hit me in a place that I didn't know that I had, and it became my mantra, get up, Daddy. But how? My only idea was to die with dignity, was to get off all those drugs, get out of all that anger and self-pity, get off the alcohol. So I checked into a detox unit and did 7 nights of cold turkey withdrawal The demons in Dante's Inferno, they exist. Because they chewed me up for 7 days and 7 nights, and I crawled out of there not knowing what to do, and I entered an experimental pain clinic. They said they couldn't help me with cancer, but they could help me with the pain. And I started with biofeedback, where you start to have a positive affirmation and imagery, and all the lights went on. I felt an inner chemistry come on inside of me that I never knew, that I could actually take part of a healing process, whatever my capacity was. 1 month into it, yoga, stiffest guy in the world. Yoga, very, very gentle, therapeutic. Somehow I heard an inner voice that said, this is your healing journey. I embraced it with complete fanaticism, and they closed because the insurance companies wouldn't reimburse them for the treatments. I went to my home and I built what I called my Himalayan cave because the yogis used to practice in these caves in the Himalayas. Mine was a little better appointed. And I started practicing 12 to 16 hours a day. Yoga postures, pranayama, which is breath work, meditation, positive agreements with myself, letting go of fear and anger and pity and doubt, and cultivating gratitude, compassion, acceptance. I became an organic vegan, pure vegetarianism, and fasted for long periods of time. I went from 225-pound blimp down to 140. I looked like I belonged in a concentration camp at that point. I was just all bones. And that was my organic chemotherapy that healed me in body and mind and spirit. That process healed me. I came home to something inside of me. And the whole time, my mantra was, get up, Daddy. Get up, Daddy. And I found myself getting into nature's rhythms, getting up at sunrise and sunset, and thanking the sun, thanking the fact that I was alive, and watching the sunset. Good night, sun. I love you. Suddenly my body's open, my practice is open, and yoga postures are like a metaphor because we also open our mind and we open our hearts and we expand in every way. And I said this so many times because it wasn't easy, but I found power every time I said, get up, Daddy. 2 years later, 85 pounds lighter, cancer-free, healed and whole. Thank God that happened. I promised I promised my son earlier, 2 years earlier, the annual Christmas parade in Coronado, that I'd carry him on my shoulders the next year. I felt like Pinocchio because I was dying. 2 years later, after the healing journey, I carried my boy through the Christmas parade on my shoulders. And very quickly, I founded what we call deep yoga, going deep into the deeper sciences of the body, mind, and spirit practice, along with my new wife, Laura Plum, who's here today. Just stand there for a second. And we're also doctors of Ayurvedic medicine, the healing science of yoga, and we train people in what we call mastery of life, to own your power and to live your truth. We support these wonderful charities that support children, and we always try to give a portion of everything that we do to lift up people who are disabled or disenfranchised in their lives and to carry that light forward. And these are pictures of some of those charities. And down in the lower left corner happens to be the person who gave me my first mantra of Get Up, Daddy. It's 15 years old now. We just rappelled down the towers of the Hyatt on for charity, all the way from the top, the big Hyatt Tower that's facing the San Diego Bay, on ropes like rock climbers, which we do. And he's still the light of my life, and he's here today on Father's Day. And from the guy in the body brace, 225 pounds, to being a senior citizen now and being able to have a different life, to me is emblematic of our capacity to really own our power and live our truth. Because as someone as dark and down and broken and resistant, as depressed as I was, could do this, I know that anyone can. I know that you all have a light inside of you that is the light of God, that can illuminate you in ways that you never dreamed, that you can knock down all the walls, untie all the knots, and be who you were really meant to be, heal yourself against unbelievable odds, help others heal eventually, because that's the real journey into this unification, because it really is a situation in which we are all in this together. It's a single song, it's a universe. And I think my healing journey is just emblematic of what we're all capable of, because my ultimate message is, boy, if I can do it, don't ever tell yourself you can't, because you have that power and you have that capacity inside of you to heal against the greatest odds. So find what really motivates you deep in your heart. Find your own get-up daddy, your own power symbol, the person that really touches you at the deepest level, and use that and repeat it to yourself every day. And you'll find that will give you strength and power, because you will have a positive agreement with yourself, and it will come from love and from that God within you. And when you do that, the whole universe will rise up to support you. Thank you all very much. So as the band gets ready, I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes for a moment. And that's an inward journey, just closing your eyes. And go down into your heart center as if there were a golden flame right there behind your breastbone, illuminating you and enlightening you. And breathe into that and feel radiant and feel luminous and all-powerful. Know that your breath is a gift from God. And your body is a sacred temple of a divine spirit. And the light that illuminates you is the same light that illuminates all the world. And just breathe into that. Feel golden, radiant, totally present. And remember that no matter what, wherever you go, you are indigenous. You belong. You always have been, you always will be. One with all that is. One with all that is.
We are awakening to the calling of the mystic. Awakening in the flowering of the heart. Everybody here melting into presence, overflowing effervescence, rising in love. Om Shanti Satchidananda. Om Shanti. Om Shanti Satchidananda.